So, okay, so first of all, I think I'm just going to need to push the whole problem set deadline to Sunday.
Okay.
So, because we didn't get it, I actually forgot to show you how to make a layout last week. I apologize, I'm a bad GIS mommy. Anyway, I forgot to make you show you guys how to make a layout last week. So we'll do that, and I'll go over handing in your problem set today. And then we're going to start a new section of class, which is fun. I was going to do another thing. What was it? It's gone. It's gone. Anyway, one thing I did want to mention is that neither Olivia nor I have office hours over the weekend. I do answer email, and occasionally, if it's really dire, I will have, I'll do a hangout with somebody over the weekend. But Olivia and I both have lots of office hours during the week. And so if you need us, feel free. Don't feel like you have to suffer in silence. I just got an email, not from somebody in this class, but from one of my other classes. And she said, I have been struggling with this for 4 hours. If you are struggling with something for 4 hours, you were struggling 4 hours too long without asking for help. So don't struggle for 4 hours. Make sure you make an appointment or whatever, or even just send an email. I'm like, my brain is sort of wired like ArcMap now after decades of doing this. So and especially for GIS1, I literally don't even need to open the software to tell you what to do to fix your problem. So it's really not a lot of trouble. So feel free to email me or make an appointment or whatever. And the appointments, obviously, I don't have to meet you in person. We can talk, it would be silly for you to come to like sit over across the hall in a hangout. So you would come. But the rest of you, if you're, off in the world, we can do a hangout together or even a phone call or whatever. Okay, so I want to get right to it. So I'm going to share my screen over here and so you can see that. Send to everyone and make sure that it's being recorded, and it is. Okay. And so the attendance code for today is, where to go? 7232. 7232. 7232, and I'll make it really big. So that's the attendance code for today. You know what happened the other day? This is a bad idea. I had somebody filled in the attendance code, and there were 0 views on the video, and they weren't online when we did the video. Kind of weird. So yeah. Anyway, so don't do that. That's silly. Watch the video first before you put the attendance code. Anyway, or watch the video, put the attendance code when you watch the video. All right, so what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna show you how to make a layout, and we'll talk about some, good layout making practices. I'm gonna start with, actually, is, first of all, I hate this color scheme that I have. Not really thrilled with it. So I'm going to change my color scheme. Let's go with pink. No, pink seems happy. Let's go with red. Sure, that's good. Okay. So so far I've gone over how to make a map, and I think you might have, in one of your tutorials, have made layouts or done basic layout stuff. So I'm going to go over that and hopefully get you, pretty clear on how to do that. And if we get through that, we'll start the next section of the class, and if not, we won't. But at very minimum today, we're going to get it to the point where you will be able to hand in your problem set, and I'll put the deadline off until Sunday, because I've had like 6 people ask for an extension, and it's like, well, if it's that many, then we'll just put it off. Okay, so I'm also going to remove this. So I'm going to assume that you've got a choropleth map and you've got it all worked out. And I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it with the correct name and so forth. So Johnson PS1. You can, I could call it Main Diabetes or something as well. Now, a couple really important things to know about. There are 2 different kinds of view on in ArcMap, and what we're looking at right now is data view. And there are 2 ways to change the view. You can click up here where it says View. You can choose Layout View. The easier way is down here, these buttons, which are so minute that you would, if you didn't know they existed, like there's no helpful information you can glean from the itsy bitsy tiny weeny little icon. But the one on the left has I guess the icon's supposed to look like that, is the data view one. And the one on the right, the layout view, the second one, I guess, is the layout view. So if you click that, it switches it to layout view. And layout view is showing you what your map would look like. So if I just hit print right now, this is what would be printed. There'd be, this is the edge of the paper, the outer black line. The inner black line, if I click on it, that's actually the outline of my data frame. So, and in fact, it's possible to have multiple data frames in one layout. I'll show you how to do that later. You'll do that for problem set 2. And then my map, right, the data itself is here in the middle, right here in the middle. Now, notice up here, when I went to layout view, a new set of tools came up. If they didn't come up for you, you might need to get them. That's the layout toolbar. So watch what happens when I go back to data view. Only my regular Zoomy tools are available now, and the layout tools are grayed out. And then if I go back to layout view, my layout tools are available. So I think it's safe to say that one of the single most frustrating problems that GIS 1 students have is dithering with which Zoomy tools to use. It sounds weird, but it can be super confusing. So I want you to notice something. So these are the regular standard Zoomy tools that we have. These tools right here are the regular tools that we usually have when we're in data view, right? That's those tools. Notice there's no layout piece of paper behind them. If I go back to layout view, my layout tools have pieces of paper behind them, right? So that's how you know which tools are which. Now, which tools to use, that's something else. So watch what happens when I use the standard Zoomy tools. If I have a zoom out, right, or zoom in, it's zooming in on inside the data frame, right? If you imagine that you have a window, like a physical window, and there's like glass in it and you can look out of it, right? What this is doing is moving the window closer or farther away from the tree in the yard. Or you can say it's moving the tree farther away from the window. Or somebody running, whatever works. But the idea is it's working inside the data frame, right? Now watch what happens when I mess around with the layout tools. So here's my zoom out tool. Look, I'm zooming out on the paper. And when I zoom in, I'm zooming in on the paper. So here's where people get messed up. Watch what I'm going to do. They use this tool and they zoom in over here and they're like, oh no, I can't see my map. So then they use these tools and they zoom way out And they go like this. Yeah. So that now it looks like, oh, your map is fine. Watch what happens when I zoom to the whole page. That's your map. Another common thing that I get. So I'll get like the whole United States, and there'll be just a little U.S. and Alaska will be way up here, and what do you call it? Hawaii will be way down here, and it'll be a portrait orientation. So it's a super tall piece of paper with a wide United States right in the middle of it, really tiny. So I also will get, because you can actually move this data frame, I will often get something that looks like this. Right, so if I open your map in ArcMap, it looks like this, but your real map that would be printed on the page or when you make a PDF looks like that. So work on being clear about which Zoomy tools you need to use. And pretty much you want to make a habit of always looking, when you're working on a layout, always look at the entire layout. Zoom in. So, and here I'm gonna zoom to full extent. So that's gonna bring my map window, make it bigger. So make a habit of using this zoom to whole page button so that you're looking at your whole layout, so you're oriented to what your map looks like. Now, a couple things that I want to add. What would I need to add to a map like this? Yeah, this map needs a legend. A choropleth map requires a legend. You should never make one without it. You're going to use the insert menu, and it seems simple, but there's some more things you're going to want to do to it. Choose insert legend. We only have one layer, so we don't have any special things we need to do, but there's a little wizard that you can go through. We'll choose next. I hate having a title for the legend unless it's really necessary. I'm going to delete the word legend, so I don't need a legend title. It's obvious what it is. It's common to have borders and outlines. You don't need that. You can also, if you want to be fancy, you can change the patch. So we have a polygon layer, right? So if you want, you can use diamonds instead of rectangles. That's up to you. You can do whatever you want there. And here you can sort of micromanage things. I'm going to leave the defaults. I'm going to click finish. And so it throws this legend here on my map. And a couple things you might notice. I'm going to zoom into the legend here. So first of all, I have like 412 billion decimal places, and that's really not useful. So there's a bunch of things I can change in my table of contents that will be automatically updated in my legend, and that's going to be one of them. Notice also this says Main County's diab, blah, 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 right? That's not useful, right? It's not even what's being shown. It's actually age-adjusted % 2004, right? So I can change anything I want over here in the table of contents, and most of those changes will be reflected over here. So I'm going to do that. And so I need to open the properties window, right click, you choose properties for that layer in the table of contents. I actually wanted to do, I thought I had age adjusted %, there it is, 2013. So that's the most updated data. I'm going to make sure that I have a classification scheme that makes sense. I'm going to use quantile here. And I'll use 4 classes. Since I have 16 counties, it'll be 4 each. Okay, so once my scene is here, I'll set, oh, by the way, normalized. Is my data normalized, or should I normalize it? That's right, it is normalized because it's a %. If it were just the count, right, the number of diabetes cases, that would not be normalized and should be. Okay, so now to change the labels, you have to do this weird thing. You have to click on labels. it's not clear that that's a button, but it is. So format label, and here I can just give it 1 decimal place, which is all I need. Much better. And I'll click OK here. Now I can also change this right here. I can change the words here and here. What you do is you click on them, pause, and click again. There are other ways to do it, and I'll call this diabetes by county. And I'll make the subtitle here age adjusted %. Spaces are fine here, right? And are good. You want spaces. And I'll save. Now, there are lots of other things you might add to your layout. In truth, this and a title are probably enough. So we'll add a title, but then I'll go on and add a bunch of other things, and we'll talk about some design considerations. So I'm going to go back to Insert, and I'm going to choose Title. And there's a weird way that it has that it adds your title. You give the title, so I'll say diabetes in Maine by county. What was it, 2013? Yeah. 2013. There it is, and it adds it in there for me. I can pick it up and move it. If I make a mistake, though, which is kind of a pain, I can double click this, and look, it doesn't, it's a dynamic text field. I can delete this and replace the name here and use it that way. But what has happened is it created a name under Map Documents Properties. That's the title that I just put, and it populated it here in this special little field under Map Documents Properties. That's File, Map Document Properties. So if I made a mistake, right? So let's say I want the B to be lowercase. If I change it here, it'll change it there. Half the time I don't give a crap and I just write it as text. I just delete the dynamic thing, but whatever. So there's that. One handy thing too, so to change it, you can double click it or right click it into Properties, either way, and then click Change Symbol, right? Let's say I want it to be bold. I can click that here and click OK, and then OK. That's a little Byzantine, right? That requires more effort than is really seems warranted. So fortunately, there's another way to do it. So I can manipulate things in my map, graphic objects in my map, using what's known as the Draw toolbar. If I right click and choose up in the gray area and choose Draw or Customize Toolbars, Draw, you get a new toolbar. And it shows up usually at the bottom. So if you have a new install of ArcGIS, it'll be in the bottom. You can move it, of course. But watch what happens. I can easily, much more easily, change the font. Let's say I want it to be Baskerville or, you know, any number of fonts. Ugh, oh, they're so bad. Cambria Math and TAR. So I can change the fonts. Generally, you want to be consistent with whatever fonts you're using. I'm just going to use, oh, sure, I'll use Book Antigua. How's that? There we go. So it's a good idea to be consistent. Another thing that we can add to our map is labels. They're optional for this problem set. I'm not going to require it, but it's good and fun to do. So I'm going to right click on the layer in the table of contents, and I can go click on label features. And I can leave this the way it is, or, and let me show you what it looks like. So I can leave this the way it is, or I can manipulate them a little bit. So let me show you. And again, this is optional. You'll do more with labels later. So I'm going to right click and choose properties. And there's a labels tab. And you can say, oh, I want the labels to be bold. You can also click this placement properties button right here and remove duplicates, because I have duplicates. I have 2 Hancock County ones. I'm going to remove those. There, that's a little better. You can do all kinds of other things. We're not going to worry about those today. Oh, the other thing you can do in the labels tab, by the way, properties, labels, is if I'm using, what was it? Antigua, Book Antigua. So you can change your font there as well. And I'll show you way more stuff that you can do with labels.
Is there a certain font that you want things handed in? Or?
There's no particular font that I want handed in. When we talk about graphic design, though, later in the semester, I will show you, we'll talk about different considerations about fonts to use. But for this, at this stage, I just want to be able to read it is enough. Yeah. And the default is Arial. That's a perfectly serviceable font. Okay. The other thing that you probably do want to add to your map is, is some text. So for example, in this case, I need to, so I clicked insert text, and then it does this really weird thing. It's hilarious because I get a lot of problem set 1 maps and GIS 1, and there are like 15 little boxes that just say text, super tiny in the middle of the map. And that's because you're probably like zoomed over here and you add, zoomed over here, you add a text field and it doesn't show up anywhere, and you don't see that this little tiny text box right here got added to your layout, and it's really small and it says text. So you want to find that and move it somewhere useful. And I'm going to zoom into it so you see what it looks like. So there it is. If you, you can immediately start typing on it when you add it. But once you move it, you have to open it in order to type. So, and the way ArcMap does these text boxes is really dumb because it doesn't wrap. So it doesn't make a new line. You have to tell it when to make a new line. So of course, I've got this diabetes data. That's the CDC diabetes statistics. And county data, right? So, yep, so this is where I've gotten the data, so I need to cite it. Oops. And incidentally, maybe I've shown you what I'm doing when I switch windows. I hold down with my thumb, I'm holding the Alt key, and with my index finger, I'm tapping Tab. That is the most awesome thing ever invented in the history of Windows, because it allows you to switch windows very quickly and rapidly and easily. So that's a little handy thing. Okay, so anyway, I need to paste in my URL, but the URL is not enough. It's going to say attribute data, and I'm going to get the title of this. U.S. Centers for Disease Control. And it's, what is it again? I'm just going to copy that right there and use that as the basis. paste that in. There we go. Diabetes data and statistics. Counties, county data. And I'm not really concerned about the format. I really don't care. And that's 2004 through 2013. And then I'll have the URL. It's a good idea to say accessed, and I'll just use today's date to 22, 18. And so that's the attribute data citation. I also need spatial data. In this case, it's from Esri Inc. Now watch what happens when I click apply. The writing is all on one line. You have to put the returns in yourself. So so I want to put a return, a carriage return here, and I'll click apply. That's better. And I can put the accessed on its own line. Apply. Oops, that's a spatial. It's supposed to say spatial data. There we go. And I can make it smaller. This is just an 8.5 by 11 format, which I will show you how to determine the size of your layout. I'll click OK. Now I can move that somewhere more useful. Now we're running into an important consideration in our map. Oh, here I can make it a little bigger maybe. And here I can use my draw toolbar to change its size if I want. So one thing that by default ArcGIS gives you is something called a neat line, and that's the border around this data frame. See that? It has a neat line. That's not required at all. You can totally remove that. The way you remove it is it's a data frame characteristic. You can either right click on the data frame name and choose properties, or right click on the data frame in your map and choose properties. It opens the same window. And what you're after is this frame tab. And you can change border to none. We'll talk about other borders later. And watch. Whoa, my map is so much less cluttered and has more room for my stuff. And I don't need to squinch so much anymore. It's pretty sweet. So that can be helpful as well. Now, these are the things that are required to be on your map. You need to have this I call meta information. You need to have meta information on it. For a choropleth map, you need to have a legend. So that's going to be required. There are other things that you can put on. So for instance, you might want to have a scale bar. And scale bars, well, actually, let's do north arrow first. North arrow is also in the insert menu. That's relatively easy. So I'm going to click north arrow, insert north arrow, and there are lots of different kinds. And GIS 1 students love the like crazy, wacky ones that are like this, and GIS 1 students love to make them huge. So I'm going to encourage you to think about making your maps a little simpler and easier to read, and using a north arrow that is more suited to your map design. I think I'm going to use, I'm going to use this one, Esri North 27. Now, I'm going to park it somewhere. It's pretty small, although notice if I click on it, in terms of font, it's 61, right? It's actually a character, a font character. And, but it's super common for students to add their north arrows and make them huge. So a lot of times you'll get feedback to like cool it with the north arrow. I had a student once who was GIS 1 and he was a graphic designer, and he passed in his problem set 1 and had a north arrow on purpose, like to give me crap. He had a north arrow that was as big as like the whole state of Maine, like huge. I think I remember which one because it's so funny. I think it was, it was this one. And so he made it like this. Just to, give me guff about it. So, unless you're making a design choice, you want to keep your north arrow to, a relatively chill size. The other thing that you might want to include is a scale bar. So you can include scale text. We're not going to deal with that right now. We're going to just do a scale bar. And so insert scale bar, and there are lots of different kinds of scale bars. Again, people like crazy, crazy scale bars. So you can chill with the scale bar as well. Sometimes it's better to have, just a really simple one like this with a little just block. So use a scale bar that is relatively mellow. I'm going to choose this first type, and I can click properties, and I get lots and lots of choices. Another way to get the properties, I'll click OK. This allows me to sort of preview it, put it where I think it's going to live in my map, which is probably going to be about here. And maybe even zoom into it so I can really watch it as I change it. And so I can get my properties window. Now you might say, okay, scale bar, that's good, I'm done. But how will you use a scale bar where each increment is 7.5 miles? Right, that's not a useful scale bar. Scale bar really needs to have increments that are usable that you can easily visualize in your head. So I'm just going to double click this scale bar to get its properties box. I had it just, there we go. Get its properties box back. And there's lots of stuff that you can fiddle around with here. You can fiddle with the size and position if you want. I almost never do. You might be tempted. So there's this thing where people tend to put boxes around absolutely everything. That makes for a super cluttered map. So I would refrain unless there's some reason why you need a box around it. But these three tabs are going to be useful. So let me move this over so you can see as we're working with them. So first of all, I want you to notice that you can resize. I'm just going to click OK. I can change the size of this, and it changes the font and the size of the scale bar and the length of the scale bar. So I can manipulate it like this, and that can be, okay. Another way that I can manipulate it is I can come here to the scaling units, and right now the default is adjust division value, so it's changing how the divisions work as I change the size. Instead of when resizing adjust division value, I want it to adjust the width. So that means that it's going to, the scale bar itself will get longer or shorter depending on how big it is. I also have control over how many divisions and subdivisions I use. So I'm going to use a division value of 10, and I'm going to use, let's say, oh, actually, let's make it 100. So I'll make a division of 100, and then the only one of those, so one 100-mile division, and then I'll use 10 subdivisions. Let's see, we'll click how that works. There it is. So there's 100 miles, and each subdivision is 10 miles. That makes sense, right? I can go to numbers and marks, and I can get rid of that 50 if I want. So instead of numbers at divisions and first midpoint, I can just make divisions and click apply, and it will remove that. Marks, I can have divisions in all subdivisions. I think I can do, see, divisions at all, yes, no, that's no good. I want all subdivisions, just apply. So that's good. There's probably a way to make the 50% mark taller or something, but, and now the color, believe it or not, you have to change things. To change the color, it says format, and all these say color. The fact of the matter is you need to change the color on all 3 tabs, 3 places. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if you can avoid changing the color, do so. So click apply. Same with font. You need to change it in a bunch of different places. But if you don't change it in a bunch of different, want to do that in a bunch of different places, you can select the scale bar and then come down to your draw toolbar, and I'll find my book Antigua, and ta-da, that's changed. Should do that with this as well. Change it to book Antigua. There it is. So now things are consistent. You can also change right in the middle of everything. You can change the style. So what if I want the pointy parts to point down instead of up? Come on, move up. Here we go. So what if I want it to be like this? I can click OK. Oh, and it looked cleared out all my stuff. There we go. 100, and 10. I don't know about you, but I love fiddling around with this stuff. I think it's really fun. You guys are super quiet online. Actually, you're all quiet. Where is everybody? It's everybody and their dog has had the flu, actually. So it's been one of the factors that people have been mentioning as for why they're struggling. So, okay, so my layout is looking pretty good now. I'm liking that. And there's, so one thing that could improve my map, and maybe I'll even make the change. It's not required, but notice that the scale of the data that I used when I created this was from the Esri counties layer, it doesn't have nice crenellations, right? So it's a little coarse scale data. So I can change that. And it's one of those, you know, if this is too much information, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But see, have I gone over how to find, yeah, did we download data from the main office of GIS last week? That we did that. Yes, she says maybe. Yes, to practice. Yes, main boundaries, county polygon. Okay, so I'm going to bring that into my map. And so that has all the nice, you know, frilly stuff that I probably want on my map. Notice, and again, if this is too much information, just don't even pay attention to it. Notice, first of all, that that layer is in my table of, in my legend. Anything you add new is added to your legend. I can make the data, the attributes that are in this map, in this diabetes by county layer, actually appear in this layer instead. Any ideas how I would do it? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the attribute table. Let's see. I wonder if it really will work. Yep. So, oh, you know, there's a problem with it, and that is that each county has multiple items in it. See how Cumberland County, which is made up of a bazillion islands, those are all separate. There's a lot of them. Look at that. Holy crap.
Can you just make the main boundaries that have no color? Then you can sort of like see through it. It wouldn't be perfect.
You could. So she just suggested doing this, which, you know, it's not super bad. So let me show you how I would fix it. Yes, you would join them, Zach. But before we join them, we can actually merge them all together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this fun little trick. So first of all, I'm going to select by attributes. So selection, select by attributes. Feel free to do this with me if you have the data. And I'm going to select from main boundaries county polygon layer, but just the land. I don't need the water part for a diabetes map. So I'm just going to say land equals, and then I'm going to get unique values. And I can see yes and no, right? So the yes will give me water. I'm going to double click that. And so here I have my query, land equals yes. If I click OK, notice that the water is not selected, but the land is. Now I'm going to use a geoprocessing tool. And the tool I'm going to use is called dissolve. And it's going to merge together, blend together, dissolve together all the counties that have the same name. So there'll be one row in the attribute table for each one. So geoprocessing, dissolve. My input features, you can either select from the list, which is main boundaries county polygon, or I can drag them in from my map. Either way works. And the output, I'll put in my problem set 1. Problem set 1. And so this will be main counties land. And then this is the really important part, dissolve field. So I don't want one big fat blob of all Maine. I want the counties to be separate. So I'm going to check county. And so it's going to keep the county name separate, but any adjacent, or even if it's an island, it's going to dissolve into one row in the attribute table. So once that's all set up, I just click OK. It should be pretty quick. We'll only use the selected features. That's good. And now I can turn off my main boundary county polygon. And let's look at the attribute table of this layer. It should have it has 17. What is this? I've got something annoying. What is it? Oh, those little islands. Those won't bother anything. See the little islands off of there? They don't have a county. I can get rid of them. But actually, I don't need to. So I'm going to clear the selected features now. So I can remove the main county boundaries polygon. Now, as Zach suggested, we can join the land layer to the counties layer. So we're going to right click on main counties land and choose joins and relates, join. And is this an attribute or a spatial join? Attribute. Yep. So it's join attributes from a table. The field in this layer is going to be county. And then the other layer, it's got to be diabetes by county. And its field is going to be name. I'm going to keep only the matching records. And one thing that's in that way, those little, you know, records that don't match will go, hopefully those little counties will, islands that don't have a county will go away. And I'm going to click validate join. I want at least 16 matches, right? And yes, I will index 16 of 17, perfect. So I'll click close and okay. Now, if I open my attribute table and scroll all the way over here, there it is. I have my diabetes data here, right? And notice that any field that doesn't, one that didn't have a county, those islands out in the middle of nowhere are gone. Perfect. Now I'm going to save this as a new layer. I'm going to right click and choose data, export data. Remember, we did that before. And I'm going to save this. Let's see, this PS1 practice. And I'm going to give it the same name as the original one, but I'll say 24K as in the scale, the scale that this data is supposed to be viewed at. And I'll click OK. Never ever let something be called export output, ever. And I do want to add it to my map. I can remove the old county's land now. So now I have that wonderful color scheme and this wonderful layer. Now I want the color scheme to work. Now I can do it again, right? So I can do properties and symbology, quantities. I can do all of this again. There's another way. I can also import. I'll click this import button right up here. Look, and it says, oh, you want to import symbology from diabetes by county? The complete symbology? And I say, oh, yes, please. Okay. It's like magic. And we'll click OK. And OK. Oh, look at that. Isn't that great? And now I can remove the old layer, remove it. I'm kind of thinking the sort of squiggly lines here are a little much. So I might want to make them a little mellower. Let's see, isn't the main counties designed for a much larger scale? Oh, you mean which main counties? You mean the layer that we downloaded for from the state? Yes, yeah, so it's designed for 24K. Yeah, that's designed for 24K, and our map has a much smaller scale than that. Now, it is possible. In fact, there's a tool, and again, if this is TMI, just pretend like it's not happening. There it is, cryptography tools. So there's a generalization tool set that allows you to simplify a polygon, and you can actually choose how much you want to simplify it. So if you don't like the way it looks at the scale and you don't have data that's at the right scale, find data that's at a much, much larger scale and then simplify the polygon to the degree that works. There's also smooth polygon, but that is so not necessary for this assignment, your problem set 1. All right, any questions so far? You're giggling?
Yeah, mine just is not right.
Yours is not right?
It's like making half the map go white when I join.
Ah, so if they're not right, If it didn't join, it may be that, well, it depends on, did you use Main Counties for your, so, and when you validated the join, did it work?
It's when I'm like adding the data in the properties section in symbology, and it's like importing the data.
Oh, when you do the import. Maybe, well, it definitely should work if you just, you know, do it the standard way. And then, of course, now that we've gotten ourselves in this mess, we have to change the labels again, so it only has one decimal place. By the way, in GIS, you never do anything once. Just so you know, that's just reality. You're always changing or, you know, doing things again. Page adjusted. It's like math that way. Percent. You know how math, you never do a problem one time. This is the same way. All right, and I want to change to Book Antigua. It looks like it lost that. Book Antigua, there we go. So a couple of things that you might want to know about. I'm going to click Save here. So if, depending on what you've made for your map, so I made a main map, and so this portrait orientation works pretty well. But if I wanted to have a landscape orientation where it's wide instead of tall, I would go to File, Page and Print Setup. And this allows me to, first of all, I can set it up for a specific printer, for one thing, which is helpful. So you don't design a map that won't actually fit on a piece of paper that can be printed with your printer. So that's possible. You can use or not use the printer paper settings. So I don't need to use the settings that this one, you know, printer uses, but I can if I want. I can change to a landscape orientation. If I want, I can scale my map elements proportionally by checking this box so that if I make it bigger, everything in my map gets bigger. I can choose the size of my map based on lots of different things. So that was a weird sound. There was just a doo-doo sound. Where is it? Tabloid. So if I use tabloid, right, 11 by 17, and I change the size, here I'm going to go back to portrait, change the size and scale map elements. There we go. And click OK. My map remained mostly the same, right? But it made things bigger. They're relatively in the same place. I do, because of the aspect ratio, the ratio between the width and the height is different for tabloid than it is for 8.5 by 11. It's a little, excuse me, a little awkward now. So I might want to, you know, scooch things around a little bit. But I do have a little more room now. So that is also an option. I think in the assignment, I think I said an 8.5 by 11 map. Is that right? I can't remember. Now, a couple of design considerations. Oh, I lost my labels as well when I changed my data. So I'll add those again. And notice I now have a zillion separate polygons for Saginaw County, so I can remove those. Properties, labels. I can remove duplicates. And then maybe I want them bold. They're kind of small now that I've got a bigger layout. Did you find what I
don't think you could.
I didn't clarify. Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, I fully expected 8.5 by 11. later on, I'll actually give you a size. So a couple of design considerations. One thing is really important is to make the elements legible, visible, right? And so they need to be large enough that they can be seen. There's a handy button in your layout toolbar called Zoom to 100%. It's not perfect, but it zooms you in and you can see how big things will be when somebody looks at your map. And you can see if something's sort of ridiculously small. This, for instance, is kind of small, and you know, I might want to change that. And so you can scooch things around. Make that 14. And that will help in your design is making sure that things are a reasonable size for people to read. This now probably should be a little larger. And you also want to, this is a common mistake that people make. Incidentally, the dotted line, when you use printer paper settings, it detects what your printer can print on and it puts a dotted line. Anything over that dotted line will not show up. So if I do this, for instance, it'll be cut off there when I print it. So I'll move that over here and inside. So a common thing that people do is this. What's wrong with doing this? Why would this be a bad idea? So one problem is that you are running the risk of cutting edges off. Yeah, so that's one problem. The other problem is that you may not know it when you're looking at it, but you might, some people sort of just really need everything to be right up to the edge, but it gives the layout a sort of cluttered, claustrophobic feel. And so you want to make sure that you have some space, give some space around every element and in the margin of your map always. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So make sure that you leave some margins and don't smush everything. A great use of a north arrow is to fill in negative space, so space that seems sort of overly empty. Notice also that I'm keeping the legend. So legend is what we call a really heavy element. It's thick and has lots of you know, color on it. And so if I put it up here, it gives me a top-heavy look and feel, which isn't great, right? If I want to have a more balanced, easygoing legend, then or layout, then I want to put it down a little lower. So be careful about putting big, giant things up on top. I can balance the layout a little bit more by moving the sort of center of weight so that it's over the center of the layout and actually just below, like that. So really subtle changes like that really help. And avoid the putting boxes around everything trap. That's a bad idea. It's a real problem. And it makes it really hard to fit everything, right? Sometimes boxes are required or a good idea to sort of organize things, and we'll use them on one of the layouts that you're going to make for problem set 2. You're going to have multiple data frames, and you really need boxes around those. Or some organizing element. So we'll talk about how to do them, but avoiding boxes is a good idea. Any other questions about that? Oh, right. I was going to change the outline color for my layer here, and we'll show you. So first of all, I think there's still a glitch. So let's see. If I click this where it says sim, right, or symbol, if I move it, it's supposed to say symbol. If I click that, I have these choices, and I can change a bunch of things, a bunch of symbols at once. If I go properties for all symbols, but there's still a bug. It doesn't come up. It's the second version. It was a bug in 4.10.4, and it's again in 4.10.5. I don't know why. Anyway, so what we have to do instead is select all of these, and then click on symbol and properties for selected symbols, and it will come up. And I don't need such a dark outline. It's just not necessary. And so that brings the color forward a little. Another way to do it is, oh, I'm going to select them again. Oops. I'm going to select them again. There we go. Properties for selected symbols. Another way to do it is to make the outline completely white. And apply. And that can work well. You can, if you want, create a background color for your, this is, again, if it's TMI, just ignore it, but you can create a background color. So for instance, I can take my data frame and go to properties, and then under background, I can say 10% gray. And that's sort of cute. But then you also have this problem where it's a box that, you know, you have to organize around and so forth. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go back to no background. Let's see, yeah, none. And I'm going to go back to, so bummed that that bug is there. But then I have only myself to blame because I don't think I reported that bug. So I can complain all I want. All right, I'm going to make the outline just a light gray. So that's a little better. I don't know. If the lower counties were darker, it would be better. But they're not. Just is what we have to work with. See, you never do anything once, ever. All right. So now that we've got a layout, and you don't have to futz too much, we're going to talk a lot more about design. So your layout, one thing that's really, really fun is to go back and look at your problem set 1 layout later, and like you laugh because you're like, oh my God, I made that. So don't worry, it's not going to be super pretty or anything, but this will get you started, and I'll give you lots of feedback, and that's really helpful. Okay, so now that we've got this layout, we're gonna export it. So, or create a map package of it. So I'm gonna let me save, and let me show you what not to hand in, just as another reminder. Yes, I'm a broken record. See where it says johnsonps1.mxd? Don't hand that in, because that doesn't have any data in it. Right? So what I'll get is a map that looks like this. Literally, that's what it looks like. So don't do that. So what you want to do is I'll save it. Then I'll go File, Share As, not Save As, but Share As Map Package. And it gets this little wizard here. It's required to have certain things. It doesn't say description is required, but it is. Tags are required, and summary is required. So this is diabetes in Maine counties 2013. And the tag would be diabetes, would be 1, Maine counties. And so I'm, notice I'm separating the tag with a comma. right? And these are search terms that you can use to search. And then I usually, unless there's a reason, I usually just copy the summary right into the description. These are not required, but it's not a bad idea to say attribute data US Centers for Disease Control. The full citation is in the map. And then also over here where it says save package to file, it's choosing a location. It's not the same location that I had. So I'm going to go back. There's my PS1 folder. So Johnson _ PS1. It must begin with your last name and have no spaces. So now that's going to a place I know. It's a super common thing. It's already happened. That the GIS2 students are like, why is somebody else's choropleth map in my folder? So, so you'll lose some, and that'll happen. You can determine whether it's ready to go by clicking Analyze, and it says complete, and there are no errors or warnings that come up. It's rare in this case. You can add additional files, but that's not necessary in this case either. And then you just click Share and wait. If you've forgotten to save your map, it'll ask you want to save, and it will create the package, and then it will remind you where you put it. And so that, the MPK, is what you hand in. So let's go over there. So there it is. It looks similar to an MXD because its extension starts with an M, but this is what it looks like. It has the little package icon. Now, one other thing that you might notice is that because the data is actually in this package, it's bigger. So this map is 4,000 kilobytes, it's 4 megabytes. And the MXD document, which doesn't have your data in it, is only 688 kilobytes. So I'm still looking for other ways to say this because I still get MXD documents. Someday I'll have a whole assignment and no one will hand one in. I love that. So anyway, once you've created it, it is now a compressed file. And if you have 7-zip, 7-zip recognizes it as a compressed file. So I can take it and move it. So I'm going to move it over here to my downloads folder to a whole different place. Come on, open. It's really not that full, is it? We've been doing building models in GIS2, and like the computers are kind of slow. There we go. Okay, so here it is. I can get rid of all the rest of this stuff. I'm going to delete all that so it's out of my way. So here's my MPK file. Now, if I right click on it and I have 7-zip installed, it recognizes it as an archive. And I just want to show you something. I think I've shown this to you before, but I just want to make sure you're clear about it. So you can unpack it. And one of the reasons why I'm reminding you of this is that some of you guys are using 10.4 instead of 10.5. If you're using 10.4 and you want to open a map package that someone else has created, or if you're using 10.6, I don't have 10.6, but I can still open your map package because it saves an earlier version. So there's a version 10 and a version 10.5. That's another reason to hand in a map package, because it's compatible that way. And when you unpack it, it gives you those 2 versions of an MXD document. And they're saved in such a way that they're linked to your data, and your data is packaged with it. So that's my shape file right there. All of the pieces of it are there, and it's ready to go. So all you have to do is hand in this MPK file, and you'll have it. The last thing you're going to do, and this is a stopgap because some people hand in MXD documents and I don't have a map, so I can't give you a grade on the beautiful map that you made. You're also going to create a PDF of this map. And so to do that, you're going to click File, Export Map. And under Save As Type, you can see, so if you're making a map for somebody to use for things like, you know, putting on a website or something, you can choose a JPEG or a PNG file. But for this purpose, you're going to choose a PDF. A PDF is, Zach says your MXD is larger than your MPK. Is that a problem? MXD is larger. Huh. Well, it would be unusual. I don't think it's a problem, but it might be if, let's see, I'm trying to think of why it would be larger. Well, I'll tell you, Zach, I'll let you know. One way you can find out is to open the MPK file, and if it opens and looks like the right map, so just go to ArcMap and double click, you know, find it and double click on it. If it opens and looks like the right map, then you'll be able to tell whether it's appropriate. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to put it in my correct folder. There's my PS1 practice. So I've got the name. I'm saved the file type as PDF. I typically use a 300 dots per inch resolution, and that will anything that is rasterized, so anything that covers an area in your map. For now, you don't need to worry about any of this other stuff. We'll talk about some of them later. And we'll click Save, and we'll wait for it. It's super quick in a map like this. And then if I go back to my folder, so I'm gonna just go back to my workspace folder. This one practice. I'm gonna paste my, there it is. So here's my PDF, and I can open it and see what it looks like. And I'm actually kind of liking the stuff down here. Look at that. Do you see a line there too? Yeah.
No.
That's weird. I don't know what that line's about. But anyway, looks pretty good. So now I have all the pieces for handing in my problem set, and I can hand it in. So let me show you how to do that. Oh, it's installing updates. It's my day. It really just is my day. So I'm going to sign in as a fake student and hand in my assignment. So you'll see what that looks like. It's a fancy new version of Firefox. Ooh. Okay, so I'm going to go to GIS 230 and come on over here. You're too fancy for me, Firefox. And I'm going to go to problem set 1. Save your map. Click here to submit. There we go. And I'm going to sign in as my fake student. It's really handy having 2 IDs. There we go. Okay, and so when I'm ready to hand it in, you can click here and choose File. And if you have it saved in on your Google Drive, you can do that. But more likely, you're going to want to upload it. And there's my PS1 practice. I think I can do multiple ones. Notice I am not selecting anything with an MXD extension, just my MPK and my PS1, my PDF. And I'll click Open. and upload. And it says, stop. Before you click submit, look at your attached files. They must be submitted in 2 forms. You need an MPK and a PDF, right? And that's it. And that's what I've got. And now I can click turn in.
And you want the answers to the other questions just in private
In
comments?
private comments, that's right. So, and actually you can add them before or after you submit, doesn't matter. And so yeah, just go away. Jeez. There. The answers to your questions go here and post. All right. So that's how you hand it in and how you do your problem set. And we finished it right in time with 1 minute to spare. Any other questions or comments or anything? So just as a quick reminder, if you want to make an appointment, if you need help, you can always go to home here and go to the office hours link. There it is. And remember that Olivia has more office hours than I do. So if one of my office hours won't work for you, although on Fridays I actually do have a lot, you can always look at her office hours and see what might work. So see all her office hours. And she even has evening office hours and I do not. So that's handy. Although they're just Monday and Tuesday. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. And if you have any questions, I got another one of these to do. One more. And then I'll be all set. If you have any questions, email, smoke signal, everything. All righty. And I'll nag. All right.